So today we're going to talk about evolving your work and really what it takes to do that, which is finding that unique art style. And you can make commercially viable work and be your most authentic self, learning how to actually find your unique art style that sells. But there's a few things you need to know, and today I want to talk about things that no one else is talking about. And because I have a really unique background, I have an insight in this area that is probably something you haven't heard before. So if you're an artist feeling stuck in your style, frustrated that your work isn't being discovered or selling, you're not alone. Hi, I'm Michele Luminato, and if you're new around here on the Sellable Art That Feels Like Me podcast, I have been creating and pouring myself into my work and selling my work for over 20 years. And some art took a lot more effort and less money and struggled to sell, and other art has flowed easily and commanded higher prices. And I want to share with you what it has been like for me to evolve my work. And I'm talking about the varying differences from low-end pricing to high-end pricing, and really working through what that means for me as an artist. For me, it wasn't about just creating the art. It was about understanding my audience and how the market embraced my evolving artistic voice. And when I started to really understand this, it changed everything. So I want to share a quick story about the evolution of my work. So the evolution started with geometrics. I absolutely love geometric shapes. They represent me, and through my painting journey, I have had an evolution of what that means to me. And if you're on YouTube, you will see examples of some of my earlier geometric work. And although these paintings sold early on, the paintings just didn't really feel like they represented me fully, and they didn't really represent my taste. A more minimal side of me wasn't represented, and I knew that. Even though they were selling, it attracted people who were not willing to pay me for what I wanted for the time that I put in them. And I felt this tension, so I knew I needed to evolve my work, and I really got committed to what that looked like, and I'll share with you more behind the scenes of that journey. But then when I started evolving my work into being more of me, truly me, the work sold easier and also creates a waiting list that grows every week. The work started to satisfy me way more as an artist and feel like all of me. And that was such a great feeling. And the bonus was that it attracted people who were willing to pay me what I wanted for the time I was putting into the artwork. So there is many variations of my journey, but I wanted to share those two extreme examples. Earlier in my journey, it didn't feel like me. It wasn't attracting the person that I really was looking for. And as I evolved, it started to be more satisfying and attracted the people that I wanted to work with. So I evolved and peeled back the onion. And I'm a big fan of continually peeling back the onion, but being more of me while selling and raising my prices. And in today's episode, I'll share the secrets to making this work for you too. And we're going to talk about why evolving is so important for your work, finding inspiration that's true to you, that makes it unique, and attracting your perfect audience while evolving your work. I learned that by evolving my art, even though I was successfully already selling, it made me way more satisfied as an artist, allowed me to raise my prices to what I wanted to be paid for them, and create a waiting list that grows weekly, grow my art business in a real sustainable way, even during hard economic times. And that has been a real true game changer. And growing with an audience that tires of sameness. And there is a buyer cycle, and I want to share that buyer cycle with you here because I don't think anyone is talking about this, and it's a real challenge for every market, and artists are not excluded from this buyer cycle. By evolving my work, I've been able to have repeat clients without chasing more followers and selling my soul. I have really not put a lot of energy into viral reels and really trying to hack Instagram on a super growth spurt. I'm really looking at finding those ideal people without selling my soul. So if that sounds interesting, and if you're wondering how to make your most authentic work and make it commercially viable, this episode is for you. But there's a few things that you need to do, and I want to unpack this in a way that is as simple as I know how, but at the same time, full disclaimer, sometimes what I have to say and tell you about could feel a bit like a fire hose. So bear with me as I try to simplify this as much as possible. What got you here won't get you there. And what I mean by that is building on what we discussed in episode 11 about the changing cultural landscape towards more authenticity. Today, we're going to dive way deeper into how you can evolve your work while staying true to yourself, meaning becoming more of you, becoming more authentic. I mean, there is this cultural shift that's guiding art trends, and it's guiding the whole world in every area, and that is authenticity. So it isn't optional to be authentic anymore, and you'll be left behind without being authentic. And I know that if you're listening to this, you probably already want to be your most authentic self. Authenticity will be the backbone of where we are going. We are in a trust recession. We want deeper connections as consumers, real connections. Consumer buyers are more discerning than ever, and sameness isn't working. And if you didn't get a chance to listen to episode 11, I definitely recommend going back and listening to that after this one. So evolving is a necessity. It's not optional. And here's why. Again, this is related to consumer buying trends. I'm going to share some things with you in this episode that you might not have heard before unless you've been in my world for a little while and have heard me talk about this. You will need to become more distinct and unique authentically, meaning the real you, and you will exhaust your current audience and the market will demand it if you don't evolve. And I think that there's a really misunderstanding or lack of information going on how important evolving really is in any business. And again, art is no exception. The market moves on at some point, and you should leverage this in your art. And as an artist, it's way more interesting to evolve and explore and expand and make a deeper connection to what you really love anyway. So it's a win-win. Evolving is a big win, but the market will demand it even if you don't want to evolve. So briefly, I want to touch on something that I haven't talked about on a podcast before, which is the buying cycle and trends. And again, if you're on YouTube, you're going to see a graph. I'm showing you some visuals of this. But what I mean by this is there is a timing of how long you will be able to sell in the market. The buyer's cycle is something that is common in every market. And although at the beginning, something may be hot. Eventually, the product, and if you think of art as a product, to the consumer, eventually it moves through the bell curve. So it's an up curve and then it's a down curve. And that is what is known as the bell curve. And there are different types of people at different stages. And early adopters drive trends, but to stay relevant, you have to consider the whole market curve and where you are in it. And I think a lot of artists don't know where they're actually fitting in the bell curve. But long story short, without going into the bell curve too much, maybe we should do that as another episode, but the bell curve works like this. You are either at the back end of the bell curve, meaning the market is very short. You won't have a lot of time to sell that because the market will move on quickly. Or you're at the beginning of the bell curve and then you can maximize the market, meaning you're getting the early adopters and you're getting the people all the way to the end, or you move out before it's over. Because in the end, the people who adopt the buyer cycle last, they tend to be laggers. They're not really that interested in quality things. This is where you will see a lot of things going to Kmart and mass volume. I better just stay on track because I could go off on a tangent about this. But like a product with a limited shelf life, clinging to the same style can limit your audience reach and potential earnings as an artist, and also feeling satisfied as an artist. So although it might be tempting to say, well, this is working, I'm just going to stick with it, you eventually will run out of your current audience and you will have to grow your audience and go beyond what you are used to, or you will have to evolve your work. So basically, the market moves on with or without you, and you've got to decide what you're really interested in. So I like to really evolve, because if you evolve, your art is going to stay fresh for you and for your market. So again, without getting off on a tangent on the buyer cycle, it's important to know that art is not what you're selling on the bell curve. I know this is like a band-aid. I feel like I'm always saying things like, let me explain what I mean by this. You might be saying, okay, Michelle, I know there's a buyer cycle. I'm not quite understanding where I'm in it, but at the same time, you're going off on a tangent. So hang on with me while I explain. Art is not what you are selling on the bell curve. What do I mean by that? I know it's a weird phrase, but most artists don't know what they're actually selling. You think you're selling art or a piece of art, but you are not. I know. This is one of those things that nobody's talking about. You are selling an idea. Let me say that one more time. You are selling an idea, what value you represent, or how it makes them feel. And there is no getting around this, and I'll explain how this works and what it means to us as artists. But most artists don't know who they are selling to, and they struggle to get that right audience fit match, because it just is one of those things, like if you don't know what you're selling and who you're selling to, it's very hard to get a right fit audience match and longevity with your art career. So once you know what and who you are selling to, it gets way simpler so that you can focus on bringing out your most authentic self to those who actually get you. And this is why this is a kicker. It's a good one. So let me explain what this means. So I'm going to use Nike as a metaphor to explain some of the things that I teach, because I know the company really well. I know how they think and do things, and I'm going to explain a lot by using them as an example. So Nike is not selling shoes and clothes in spite of what you see as their physical products. Let me explain. They are selling the idea that anyone can just do it, meaning they make us feel optimistic that we can achieve things. They are selling the feeling and idea, and by wearing the clothes, the shoes, the gear, that we can achieve what we want. And that's one reason why they have longevity. They believe this to be true. It's a belief, it's a value, it's an idea, and it's authentically theirs, as in they really truly believe this. And knowing what I know about being part of that corporation, I can't even tell you how much this resonated with us through everything we did. This is what I mean when I say you are selling an idea, a value, and how it makes them feel through your art. It's more than art. It's more than a physical product. And when we get a handle on this, it makes a really big difference. Nike also knows how important it is for them to evolve as a brand. They really know this to the core, so that they can feel inspired and to keep the attention of their ideal audience who buys their product. And they have to do this authentically. And they're so dedicated to evolving and innovating that they have a whole department and team dedicated to advanced RD&D, which means advanced research, design, and development. They have a team that explores, innovates, and evolves looking 5 years out. Now, I haven't been there in a while as an employee, but I'm guessing that they may even be looking even more in the future. They bring that to market at the right timing. So they're always evolving, and they don't wait till their audience is not buying to figure this out. That's why they have longevity in the market. So when you combine the idea of they know what they're selling beyond a physical product to the evolution of evolving that product and the idea authentically, that's where you get longevity. So whether you like Nike as a company is really irrelevant. It's more about understanding how they're actually having longevity as a really strong company that does not seem to be going anywhere. And what are they doing well? Well, this is it. Definitely, this is it. So how can we evolve as an artist? And for us artists, we have to evolve for ourselves. I mean, I really think we actually lose steam when we're not feeling really inspired. And our audience feels a bit tired as well. And we need to keep inspired, and they want us to inspire them as well. So I want you to look at Frank Stella, amazing artist that has definitely changed contemporary art. And if you look at his career as an artist, he evolved over and over up until he was 87. He made his most impactful and ambitious work all the way until the end of his life. And he didn't have longevity by doing the same thing. He evolved. And again, if you're on YouTube, you see some examples. He had geometric work in the beginning. It was very flat. And in the end, he really took it to another level by doing a lot more sculpture work and super powerful work. And again, his value increased as an artist. The prices went up. He became more valuable. And I'm sure he felt really inspired as an artist as well. And then look at Picasso. I mean, I don't need to show you examples of Picasso because it's pretty obvious, but he evolved, he explored, he pushed the boundaries, and he became known because of it. And he had staying power. Now, I know many of you are like, well, I don't want to be a Frank Stella. I'm not looking to be a Picasso. I get it. But it's so important, and I want to give you some other examples around Australian artists. So if you look at John Olsen and Jordy Kerwick as artists, when you look at John Olsen's evolution from early abstract works to vibrant landscape abstract paintings, he was capturing the Australian terrain with his brushwork that only he could do, and it allowed him to forge a distinctive artistic voice that made him one of Australia's most renowned artists with a career spanning over 7 decades. I mean, he had longevity, and I'm sure he felt really inspired by the evolution of that as well. And of course, the value of his work increased. And one of my favorite examples is Jordy Kerwick. And if you don't know Jordy, you should definitely look him up. He's a contemporary artist right now. I remember when Jordy started painting, I was literally following his journey from the very beginning. Jordy transitioned from traditional still lifes to vibrant, whimsical paintings featuring domestic objects and mythical creatures, and it's propelled him from being a local artist into an international artist, and he just started painting in 2016. So this is huge. Not everyone wants to be a Jordy Kerwick, but I'm just pointing out that for sustainability, you really want to evolve. It's really important, and these are examples of real people doing it in the real world. I think it feels like there is a difference. Like if you cater to the market, you won't have control of your artistic vision. But what I want to talk about next is really how do we balance those market demands and evolve our work while we have market considerations, which means we understand our target market, who you are actually creating your work for, meaning who is the best ideal person to buy it, understanding what their buying power is, what kind of things they can buy, how much money they can spend, understanding what trends your art fits into so that there's less chance of failure, as in when you create that product, you know how it's going to fit with your buyer's needs as well, and staying true to your vision and authenticity. And this means what kind of art offers do your ideal collectors want to pay for related to size, color, the way it's executed, and really combining that sweet spot where you love it and they love it as well. So the more unique you get, the better skilled you get, the higher price points that you can charge for your work because there isn't anyone else that they can buy it from. And so I think we want to also look at it from the consumer buying trends perspective. Most artists fit into 8 big buckets of consumer buying trends. And this is going to sound a little geeky, so bear with me. But what I mean by that is at a macro level, this is what people buy beyond the art, how it makes them feel, what values it represents, and what it means to them or what it's doing for them. And when you know how to leverage this, it changes everything because you are looking at it from this authentic perspective. And when you look at this closer, then you can pay attention to micro trends that are relevant to you, that you actually care about, that your ideal collector cares about as well. So we want to look at it from the macro level, and then we go into the micro level. And with this, I always think the most important thing that I see artists not quite get right is that sequencing is everything. What order that you look at trends. And again, if you're on YouTube, you're going to see a diagram. A lot of artists look at what they see already selling, as in, oh wow, this is popular, this looks like it's working well. And so they look at the selling market, and that is not the sequence that you want to look at art trends. It's too late, it's over, or it's really short-lived. And it's not really being authentic. It's looking at the micro trends instead of the macro first. And so when you look at it in the right order, what it really looks like, and again, this is coming from me spending years and years working in trend forecasting and color forecasting and understanding the timing of bringing things to market. You have to really look at the macro level, meaning what are the consumer buyer trends earlier on, and you do that in the order that is around your authentic perspective. And I like to look at that in the authentic core area of the questions we ask ourselves as artists. What are you all about? What are the consumer buying trends that are relevant for you? And then you bring that into your inspiration to creation process, because it makes more sense to look at it through that lens. And that really brings longevity in the market. It's authentic, it's original, it's creating original work. You feel more satisfied as an artist, and it's easier to attract better collectors because you're leading with trends as opposed to getting them when it's on the back end of the bell curve. Remember the bell curve. There is a beginning to the bell curve and there is an end to the bell curve. And when you look at it in this sequence, in this order, earlier on in the process, that's where you're actually capturing all of the bell curve instead of just a small part of it. And so when you look at it from this lens, you get your sequencing right, and then it makes sense to look at trends that are relevant for you and what makes sense for you from an authentic perspective. And ultimately, when you're looking at sequencing and trends and all of this stuff that I've told you about how to evolve your work, you really need a plan. And ultimately, like until I started using a process that allowed me to repeat this and have a plan, my work did not have profound shifts the way they are now. And we're going through a massive shift in art buying trends, and this is not going to work the same way that it has over the last 8 to 10 years. Australia is seeing a huge shift in art trends, and many artists will quit because they aren't doing the things that will actually make a difference. They are repeating what they've always done, and it won't work anymore. And I see this happening already. And so again, there is a lifespan to products, and our art is no different. And if we keep repeating that, it can tire out the market. And so we have to evolve as artists, and we need a plan for how we're going to evolve and work that into what we do. And so my recommendation is finding authentic inspiration and then letting that fuel your evolution. I literally always work towards evolving my work. It's not something that I kind of think about like, oh, I better evolve my work now. It's not like that at all. When you learn how to tap into your truest authentic inspiration, it really fuels constant evolution. And most people are really just skimming the surface, and they're not able to really develop that unique perspective that is really truly unique because it's your own artistic voice. So I recommend looking at finding authentic inspiration trends at a macro level, not blindly following trends that are already happening, but optimizing future macro and micro trends that matter to you and leaning into where the market is going for you, not by watching Instagram trendy styles that are already happening. It's too late. So the best strategies I can share today for evolving your work have to do with using best sequencing and for me and the way I teach in Origin Art, which is really the foundation of the process that I use today in my own work, it combines two key pillars. And the first one is looking at the authentic core, meaning who are you as a person? What are you all about? In Origin Art, we have a self-discovery worksheet that I have people go through where it really helps them identify key things about themselves. And when we look from that point of view, and again, if you're on YouTube, you'll see some graphs and some examples. And then we look at, once we know that information about who you are as a person, what you're all about, then we look towards culture, consumer buying trends that are relevant for you. And then step 3 is we start applying that to the inspiration to creation process, unpacking better quality answers through the micro trends and looking at the lens of color, expression, texture, and specific applications that are relevant to you and who you are as an artist, the kind of art you make. So there is a sequence to things that work really well. And this is the same sequence that Nike uses, as well as applying processes that I learned from art school. So this is really my jam. This is the area that I know really, really well. And combining these ingredients create a workflow and a process that you can customize that brings out your best work, that is really work that only you can make. And so I just have this mantra of always be evolving. You're never going to run out of ideas when you take this approach. You're constantly exploring and you're being rewarded for that as well. You get better answers for your work, meaning you get deeper, meaningful answers that make real impacts to you as an artist, and you feel excited about your work. And this is why I've been able to evolve my work whenever I want and all the time as an ongoing process, and be at the right timing for the market, even during hard economic times. And it also allows me to stay ahead of the bell curve and be rewarded for it as well. And again, if you're not ahead of the bell curve, you will be pushed out into the later part of the bell curve. When you're not maximizing the bell curve, you are at the end of the bell curve and you're really competing on price. And it is really, really hard when you're competing for price on your artwork. People tend to style shop, and usually price is what they're looking for when they're doing that. And that is really, really hard because the lowest price always wins. And I never want to put myself in that position where I'm always having to lower my price to sell my work. So the question isn't, should I evolve my work? You definitely should, because you can get better answers to your work and evolve your work whenever you want, even at the right timing for the market, even in hard economic times. And you can stay ahead of the bell curve and be rewarded for it, not being pushed out into a price competition where you're putting your work on sale because it's not selling anymore. So it isn't really about should I evolve my work? The question is when and how. And if this is something that is meaningful to you and you're really interested in evolving your work on an ongoing basis, again, which I think everyone should do. I'm hoping you understand my message in this podcast episode. This is something that I feel so passionate about, and it is my jam. And if you're interested in getting help applying all of what I've shared and going through the process of developing your own unique art style and evolving your process so that you really pull out your best work, and again, that means identifying who you are, who you are selling it to, what your art is doing for the person who is buying it, and understanding consumer buying trends relevant for you. I recommend you join the Origin Art waitlist. I'm opening up to a small group shortly after being closed for a long time, and you can find that link to the show notes. The waitlist is just a place that you can say, hey, I'm interested in learning more. It does not mean you're joining. And if you're on that waitlist, I will share more about Origin Art and the Origin Art process. And you can decide if it's a good fit for you to work closer with me or not. So stay tuned for more episodes. Follow the podcast for new updates weekly. And if you enjoyed this episode, thank you for sharing it with others. And you can also tag me on Instagram at originart_with_Michele. And if you're on YouTube, watch this next. I think you're going to like it.